All right, let's talk about learning a new language. But forget everything you know about flashcards and grammar drills. Today, we're diving into two of the weirdest, most psychologically driven methods ever invented. I'm talking about approaches that treat the classroom less like a lecture hall and more like a therapist's office. And to get why anyone would do that, we have to start with a really basic question.
I mean, seriously, why is learning a new language so scary? You've all been there, right? You know the words, you memorize the rules, but the second you have to actually speak to someone, you just freeze. What is that feeling?
Well, a psychologist named Charles A. Curran had an answer. He basically said the number one thing holding you back isn't your brain, it's your feelings. It's that deep, paralyzing fear of looking foolish. He believed that single emotion puts up this massive defensive wall, and until you tear that wall down, real learning, it's pretty much impossible.
So this idea that our own feelings can literally shut down our ability to learn, it sparked a revolution in teaching back in the 70s. It was called the humanistic approach. And the main goal wasn't just to cram vocabulary into your head. No, the first step was to tear down that psychological barrier we just talked about.
And that led them to ask a really radical question. What if you flipped the whole classroom dynamic on its head? What if the teacher wasn't an intimidating authority figure anymore, but was more like a counselor? Someone whose number one job was just to make you, the student, feel totally and completely secure.
And that brings us to our first method, which came straight out of that very idea. It's called Community Language Learning, or CLL for short, and it was developed by that same guy, Charles Curran. He basically took the rulebook from group therapy and slapped it right onto a language class.
Okay, so picture this. A CLL class looks nothing like a normal classroom. There are no desks in rows staring at a blackboard. Instead, the students, who are actually called clients, they sit in a circle. And the teacher, called the knower, stands outside the circle. I mean, right from the get-go, the entire power structure is just gone. It's designed to feel like a community.
So how does this actually work? Well, let's say you're a student and you want to say something. You just say it in your own native language. Then the knower, the teacher, quietly leans over and whispers the translation in your ear. Then you repeat that foreign phrase into a tape recorder sitting in the middle of the circle. And you just keep doing that sentence by sentence, building a whole conversation that comes entirely from the students. And the coolest part? Afterwards, the group listens back to the recording and analyzes the conversation they created. The student is always in the driver's seat.
The key thing to get here is the teacher's role. It's completely different. They're not giving lectures. They're not making you do drills. They are a knower, basically a walking, talking, supportive resource. Yeah, they know the language, but their main job is to provide a feeling of security, to get what you're going through emotionally, and, this is huge, to only give you the language when you ask for it.
So the whole point of this entire setup is to do just one thing. Build a community that's so tight-knit, a space that's so safe, that fear of looking stupid we talked about, it just disappears. The learning almost becomes a side effect of feeling totally secure.
Okay, but what if you took this whole idea of feeling secure and just cranked it up to 11? If CLL turned the teacher into a counselor, our next method, Suggestopedia, tried to literally redesign the student's entire state of mind. And no joke, this one sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi novel. It was developed by a Bulgarian psychiatrist named Georgy Lozanov, and his whole theory was that you could use psychology to unlock the brain's hidden reserve capacities for learning. It is wild.
I mean, just get a load of this classroom. The students are literally reclining in comfy armchairs. The lights are dim and soft. There's Baroque music playing in the background, specifically music with a tempo of 60 beats per minute, which is supposed to match a calm heart rate. But wait, it gets weirder. To really break down their anxieties, students even take on new names and new identities for the class. And the teacher? They don't just teach, they perform. They read the text with all the dramatic flair of a stage actor.
So, what's with the Baroque music? Well, Lozanov's theory was based on some, let's say, interesting research. He pointed to a study that showed plants apparently grew way better when they were exposed to this kind of music. So the idea was, hey, if the right environment can make a plant grow effortlessly, maybe it can do the same for a human mind.
All of this leads up to the main event, something called the concert session. The students are basically put into this super relaxed, almost childlike state. Lozanov actually called it infantilization. You're not supposed to try to learn. You don't memorize anything, you just kick back, you listen, and you let the language kind of wash over you. The theory is that it completely bypasses your anxious adult brain and goes straight into your subconscious.
Okay, so we've got two pretty wild, very different methods here. One is all about community and group therapy. The other is about classical music and subconscious suggestion. So what on earth do these two have in common?
Well, this chart kind of lays it all out. You can see with CLL, the teacher's a counselor and the vibe is super supportive and led by the students. But in Suggestopedia, the teacher is this all-powerful conductor, running a whole theatrical show to make you feel relaxed. So, very different approaches, right? But look at the core idea. Both of them are trying to achieve the exact same thing, to get the student's mind into a secure place, totally free from all that anxiety that usually comes with learning.
Right about now, you're probably thinking, okay, this is all a little nuts. Reclining armchairs, group therapy, I get it. So why are we even talking about this? Why does any of this matter?
Because the big radical idea behind both of these methods is just as important today as it was then. They're both arguing that how you feel when you're learning is just as important as what you're learning. The emotional, the psychological, even the physical environment, that's not just some minor detail. It might actually be the whole ballgame. Your feelings directly control your brain's ability to learn.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Just think back on your own life for a second. What if the hardest part of learning, say, algebra, or a new instrument, or even a foreign language, what if it wasn't the subject itself? What if the biggest barrier was the cold, stressful, intimidating room you had to learn it in? Just imagine. What could you accomplish if you weren't afraid of looking stupid?